Kansas Governor Laura Kelly denying the clemency request from convicted serial killer John Robinson. The now 82-year-old killed 7 women and a teenage girl in Kansas and Missouri. Investigators say he lured some victims with promises of work or sex and stuffed some of the bodies into barrels. Robinson's attorney responding to the governor's decision, saying in part, John Robinson is almost 83 years old, one of the oldest death row prisoners in America. By denying him clemency, Governor Kelly has ensured that the state must continue to waste vast resources defending his death sentence instead of resolving the case with a sentence of life without parole. Kelly's decision expected to be the first of several as she serves her final term as governor. There are other clemency requests coming from Reginald and Jonathan Carr, the convicted killer, also Scott Cheever.